Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening,
Waalaikumsalam.
everyone. So today I'm as moderator for today's presentation in this classroom discourse analysis of ELT material. So everyone, tonight we are going to talk about intertextual analysis. We are from group 4. Yeah, this is our material for tonight, as you guys can see on the slideshow. So we are consists of 4 members in our group. The first is me as a moderator for tonight. I'm Anis Fadila, and the second one is Kiki Sri Wahyuni, and then the third Muhammad Zaki Arifin, and the last one is Arya Aditya Revaldi. So we would like to explain about intertextual analysis in classroom discourse analysis of ELT material. So without any further ado, let's start the presentation by the first presenter. For the first presenter, it would be Kiki. So for Kiki, time is yours. Kiki, you are not open your mic.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So the first is for introduction. This introduction for about intextuality. Intextuality is the idea that texts are connected to other texts and reflect various competing discourse. Texts are considered to be seeds of ideological and cultural struggles, and individuals serve as carriers and agents of these struggles. So next slide. So for the next about chains and networks of texts. About chains is hard news. Journalists often report other texts, speechless ideas, etc., and interpret events based on their own views. News stories also often report prediction or hypotheses based on sources, such as press release or press conference. This material also about text and context in chains. Fact in chains is all facts can be created or be created in text, depending on the cultural and historical context. For example, business committee discussion that produce multiple texts. Multiple texts, for example, is reports or minutes and etc. And the last is about intertextuality. Intertextuality involves the insert of previous text into new text through quotation, attribution, reference, and the blending of genre of text types. In textuality, analysis must take into account cultural context. Cultural context is about time, domain, and social practice. Next slide, please. And for the next sub-material about, so you can see the headlines There are the example headline from newspapers. In the pictures, Dutch told the return they took from the sea. After that is headline about sinking Islanders are facing mass evacuation, and so on. In headlines such as this, writers can exploit the grammatical potential of language to condense preparation by joining together two or more processes, each reflecting a different present, past or future state or event. In the first example, told present as a present or past verbal process is joined to return future material process, and took is as a past material process. In the second example, present process is sinking or pressing. Sinking or pressing as are linked to a possible future event, where the process is expressed as a noun or evacuation. The somewhat complex example incorporates grammatical metaphors, to which we return in the next chapter. And we now look in more detail at a news item. For the example from news items. So the problem is in the text of newspaper is European Union or European Union plans set to put up inheritance tax. This headline from Daily Express on Monday, 6 March 2006 suggests that in the future, the European Union or EU will increase inheritance tax in Britain. This appears to be strong prediction which, if not a fact in itself, is based on factual evidence. And for the prediction or probably happen is on the text newspaper is families affected by inheritance tax could be exposed to a new threat. This is from our italics. This is can look at as a could be exposed is a lot weaker as a prediction than the headline suggests. And for the last is prediction 2. The text said moves to harmonies that is around the EU could see people stung for charges on property. Here again, we have the or possibility and the more substantial point that the European Commission is considering tax on gifts given when people are still alive. a very different idea from the one stated in the headline. Since inheritance tax in Britain is on wealth left by someone on death to their heirs. Thus, the tax is on inherited wealth, and its name passed on during their lifetime. We can conclude that to this end, it has precise and sometimes the English in the role of self that which the paper its readers identify and European Union or Europe as other regardless of the facts that Britain in part of the geographical continent of Europe is actually a member of the European Union, sent representatives to the European Parliament and recognized the European Court. This is supported in the article by the use of here to refer to Britain. So that's all from me. I will give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
All right, thank you for Kiki Sri Wahyuni as the first presenter presenting about the intertextual analysis and then the chains and networks of analyzing of the text. So thank you, and we'll jump to next material, which is the second material. We would like to talking about the use of intertextuality, how it is used in classroom discourse analysis. Will be presented by Arya Aditya Rivaldi. For presenter, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the moderator to give an opportunity to me to deliver my material. So in this point, I would like to present about the use of intertextuality. So in the analysis of text related to inheritance tax in the previous section, our understanding of the news heavily depends on intertextuality. For example, a newspaper article urging readers to send a petition to Gordon Brown is interconnected with previous stories published by Daily Express on inheritance tax. So by recognizing this, the newspaper reporting patterns and political, readers can grasp the underlying motives behind the news presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, next point is about definition and function of intertextuality. So intertextuality is a discourse process closely related to recreation, literation, and interpretation. In this process, the meaning of the text does not stand alone, but is influenced by various references, quotation, or modification from other works, either explicitly or implicitly. This reflects the idea that every text is part of vast network, cultural, and historical interaction, where both readers and readers play a role in interpreting and recreating meaning based on context and understanding of previous texts. So there are the primary function of intertextuality. So the first function is revealing the strategies used by speakers and writers to reinforce or reformulate their ideas and beliefs. So in textuality in CDA helps uncover speakers and writers strategically use references, quotation, or echoes of other texts or to strengthen, modify, or legitimize their ideas and beliefs. So the second function is exposing traces of dominant ideologies or evidence of ideological struggle and cultural shifts. So in this function, intertextuality also reveals traces of dominant ideologies embedded within text or legitimize the or highlight tension between competing viewpoints. So next slide, please. So in this point is about references, sources, and plagiarism. So in this concept aligns with the belief that all new ideas are based on prior ones. This is often referred to as the principle of standing on the shoulders of giants, a phrase famously stated by Sir Isaac Newton in 1676. Okay, so that in these references, we can look that he wrote that better scientific understanding is achieved by building on the work of predecessor. So the next is in academia about sources. In academia, sources refers to the origin of an idea or concept. Scholars frequently use citation or references to acknowledge the origin of an idea, both as a sign of respect community and as a way to accelerate readers' understanding by passing background details. So next, the last is about plagiarism. In academia, intertextuality is also closely linked to with with slide sebelumnya. So it's about plagiarism in academia is also closely linked to the issue of plagiarism. While ideas themselves are not copyrighted, using someone else's words or thoughts without proper attribution is considered plagiarism. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this point is about the importance of intertextuality in discourse. In limited to literature of academia, it also appears in various forms of communication such as art, music, architecture, and film. Common example is how movies often reference or imitate scenes from other films as a form of homage or parody. In journalism, intertextuality is frequently used to introduce different voices into a news text, either through direct quotes or by embedding opinions indirectly. So maybe that's all from me. I would like to give back to moderator.
All right, thank you for the second presenter explaining about the use of intertextuality. Okay. All right, everybody, all of the audience, let's move into the third material about intertextuality in literature. Will be presented by Muhammad Zaki. For Muhammad Zaki, time and screen is yours.
Okay, thank you for our moderator today. So now I would like to tell you about material For the first, about intertextuality in literature. So, what it is intertextuality in literature? Intertextuality in literature refers to the way a text, like a novel, poem, or play, differentiates a cause or is influenced by other texts. This concept suggests that no literary work exists in isolation. Instead, it is part of a broader web of cultural and literary connections. The term was popularized by Julia Kristeva in the 1960, building on the ideas of Mikhail Bakhtin. So there is a type of intertextuality. For the first, like direct quotation, it is when an author directly quotes another text. Second, allusion, a brief indirect reference to another text or person or event. The third, parody. This is imitating the style of another work for critic. The fourth, pastiche, a mix of different texts or styles to create something new. The the fifth, adaptation and retelling, retelling a known story from a different perspective. And the last is reworking of myth or archetype, drawing from the myth or traditional stories to create new meanings. And the purpose from intertextuality in literature, there are enrichment of meaning, commentary and critique, character development, genre play innovation, creating irony, humor, establishing a shared culture. So for the mechanism, like direct quotation, allusion, parody, pastiche, homage, stylistic borrowing. So for implementation, subjectivity of interpretation, reader engagement, building literary tradition, the last, complexity and depth. So for the next material, for next slide, this is talking about intertextuality in scientific discourse. So what is intertextuality in scientific discourse? Sorry, for the next slide. Nah, intertextuality in scientific discourse refers to the way scientific texts reference, building upon, or critique previous research and establish knowledge. Just like in literature, scientific writing does not exist in isolation. Each article, research paper, or study is a part of a large conversation within a file. So, how intertextuality appears in scientific discourse? For the first, citation and references. The most direct and common form of intertextuality, researchers cite previous work to support arguments, show gap in knowledge, or provide contrasting perspective. For the second, quotation and paraphrasing, using the words or ideas of another scholars to strengthen a point or critique a question. The third, an acknowledgement of the theories and frameworks. For the fourth, reworking existing concepts. For the fifth, review article and meta-analysis. So next, the purpose of intertextuality scientific discourse, there are like building upon existing knowledge, establishing authority and credibility, defining the research problem, explaining methodology and result, facilitating communication within the scientific community, and the last, contributing to the cumulative nature of science. So for the mechanism like citation and bibliographies, literature reviews, referencing key theories and models, replication studies, meta-analysis, use standardized terminology and concepts for the implementation, like objectivity and variability, cumulative progress, community review and validation, and the last emphasis on accuracy and precision. So maybe that's all our my materials. I will give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
All right, thank you for our third presenter, Muhammad Zaki, for presenting about the intertextuality in science discourse and in literature discourse. For the next presenter is me. I'm as the last presenter this topic in intertextuality. So for the next topic, we would like to talking about expert discourse and issues of power and conclusion. So in this topic, we would like to explore how expert discourse influence power structure within English language teaching, ELT material. Before that, maybe I would like to remind your power knowledge that why we need to know or learn this topic as a future teacher. So have you ever wondered that who decided what goes into English textbook for the student? Like why do certain culture or accent and dominate while other are barely represented? Teaching English, especially in Indonesia for foreign learner, isn't just about only like how to pronouncing very fluent and how to learn like grammar and the vocabulary, but it's more complicated than that aspect. It's about power or representation and ideology. So topic will explore how critical discourse analysis of ELT material, why it is matter in creating a more inclusive learning environment to the learner itself. So then next is critical discourse analysis. We already listened to the rest of the intertextuality in literature, in science, and how to use intertextuality by the second presenter. And also you already guys know about the introduction. So but right now I would just review a little bit about studying critical discourse analysis in ELT materials is is very chill because it allow us as maybe a future teacher who menyusun yang menyusun material pembelajaran untuk para murid kita nanti. It is important because like we need to understand how expert discourse and issues of power shape the way English is taught and learned. It will shape the student understanding about English material textbook by critically analyzing teaching materials on the textbook before learning the topic on English. We also identify bias on the topic of the material and also the power imbalance and the dominant discourse that may influence student understanding. So of course, when we are in the learning activity, learning English language is not about understanding about the what is it, like before, like grammar and just how to speak English, but we need to understand about the culture and the other aspect in the in those language. So teachers can develop more equitable and reflective teaching strategies that consider diverse cultural and social contexts. The next one is jadi teman-teman sebagai seorang guru kita juga harus kritis dalam tidak cuma mengajarkan materi kepada anak-anak, tapi kita harus sebelum mengajarkan materi yang akan kita ajarkan kepada murid kita harus menganalisis dulu bahwasanya apa yang nantinya diajarkan kepada murid kita, apakah itu sudah secara culture dan social konteks sudah baik untuk diajarkan, karena itu akan merepresentasi murid-murid kita nanti terkait dengan bahasa Inggris yang akan digunakan sehari-hari. So, in this, how power operates in ELT materials. Power in ELT materials is embedded in what is included, excluded. For example, Western cultural reference often dominate, marginalizing local perspective. For example, like the textbook have the local and international culture. Some of the textbook is made within the Western cultural, and some of them is made by the local culture, which is the different of the kebiasaan dan juga nama-nama makanan ataupun nama-nama dan kebiasaan yang di dalamnya. Selanjutnya yaitu in this point saya menekankan bahwasanya the CDI is essential because will help question and deconstruct power relation in expert discourse. And the second one is encourage a more critical understanding of knowledge production. Then the next one is okay. We are already at the last slide of my presentation. So this is what I can conclude about my material is about expert in critical discourse analysis. The first is scientific and governmental discourse that remind what information was credible. The second is conflicting expert opinions revealed how power structure knowledge. And the last one is public trust was shaped by institutional discourse. Jadi at the end of my presentation, teman-teman, bahwasanya penting sekali dalam critical discourse analysis. Jadi sebelum kita mengajarkan kepada murid-murid kita tentang materi, apakah materi bahasa Inggris ini cukup untuk misalkan bagaimana murid-murid kita menggunakan bahasa itu based on the culture. Mungkin kalau misalkan di dalam textbook tersebut yang diajarkan kepada murid-murid kita mengandung atau mengandung Western culture yang dimana tidak sejalan dengan culture kita di Indonesia. Nah, mungkin itu kita bisa dikaitkan dengan ini relevan untuk Western, but it's not relevant in our country. So as a teacher, we need to critically analyze for the material that we would thought to our student. Jadi itulah pentingnya intertextuality in critical discourse analysis of ELT material in English language. So I think that's all for my material. Hope you guys understand what our groups explain about intertextuality in classroom discourse analysis. For the last, one, I said thank you as for the moderator for tonight's presentation. I'm Anis Fadila. Thank you very much. Oke, mari kita stop record.